Hello and welcome to the latest episode. And instead of talking about things like microphones and buying cheap Chinese ones and wondering if they're any good or not, I thought we'd do a bit of history. Behind me, I've collected 3 examples of the evolution of Revox tape recorders, made in Switzerland, and they go from the G36, which is a valve recorder, so tubes for our American friends. So that's a valve recorder introduced in 1963. And the one next door to it is a Revox A77. The first one, I suppose, of the modern machines, if you want to call 67 modern. But that's an A77. The one next door to that is a B77. It's actually a B77Mk II, which I think places it around about 1980. The Mark I ran from 77 to 80 as far as I'm aware. And these sort of machines are a sort of evolutionary pattern. And I thought it would be really interesting to actually compare the sound of these 3 because they all work. Now, realistically, there are differences between all the reel-to-reel machines you see on the market. The main difference is some machines will be half-track, so basically stereo across the width of a 1/4-inch tape. So that's the 2-track version. There were, of course, 4-track versions. Now, back when these things were sort of thought about, when they were new, like the A77, it was available in half-track and 1/4-track. The idea being that the 1/4-inch tape could be split up either into 2 tracks or 4, and they were actually recorded like that. So you actually had a stereo pair going one way, then you could turn the tape over and you could then record again on the other side. In actual fact, that was okay. The big problem, of course, is you couldn't then play those tapes back on somebody else's machine if they had a 2-track. If you tried that, you'd get a real mess of a sound, because if there was something recorded the other way, you'd hear that too in reverse. In actual fact, cassette machines did exactly the same thing. The 2 interlocked tracks like that. 2 one way, 2 the other. Now, if you read about, you'll hear tales about how 1/4-track quality, of course, suffers. 2-track quality is better. Yep, that's a sort of a physics thing. So a 1/4-inch tape split into 2 gives better results than a 1/4-inch tape split into 4. So in terms of signal to noise, you had to do it. And of course they also had to leave little guard bands in between each track so that you didn't get too much bleed through. And that again wastes a bit of the surface area of the tape and drops the quality. Well, back when we were doing reel-to-reels, I didn't really notice it that much. But I figured that probably if we brought some machines in, we could test things like that. Well, these are a real oddball batch. If you're looking to buy a reel-to-reel tape recorder, the ideal is a 2-track, 15-inch per second maximum speed machine. That's what most people would be looking for. If you're scouring the market for a second-hand good one, the best prices go to half-track and 15 per second, usually 7.5 and 15. Most of these machines of this kind tend to be 2-speed. Ferrograph, of course, they actually had 3-speed machines, but these ones are 2-speed. And these are not 15-inch per second. None of these machines here do 15-inch per second. The G36 is 7.5 and 3 3/4. So is the A77. The B77 version here is really designed for logging, as in recording the output maybe of a radio station, that sort of thing, where you want really, really long running time. And this B77Mk II is 1 7/8 and 3 3/4. So it doesn't even have 7.5. And I thought that would make a good little sort of test too. So is the A77 at 7.5 inch per second going to be a huge amount better than 3 3/4? Is 3 3/4 even usable? If you want to use it for music. I've always sort of thought, well, no, not really. But of course, things are a little bit different. What made me think was that sometimes cassette quality was really good. And cassette quality was 1/8 inch tape, 4 tracks, and it ran at 1 7/8. So I figured, well, the reel-to-reel ones at 3 3/4 on half track are probably better, aren't they? Must be better. So the physics of different tape speeds tends to just let you know that what you're really talking about is the upper frequency response. So as you increase from 3 3/4 to 7.5 and from 7.5 to 15 inches per second, the upper limit goes up every time, mainly to do with the tiny head gap spread out over a larger area of the tape. So the tiny head gap with slow moving tape limits the frequency response. But how much? I thought the test will work on that one, won't it? What I thought we'd need to do is establish some sort of common ground. So what I did was, instead of just using a sort of typical commercial track, I do lots of things sort of in big spaces. I'm quite a fan of real recording. And a friend of mine, Fraser, has got a really nice recording of his choir. And so I thought, we'll use that. I asked him, did he mind? And he went, no, we'll have a go. I think he'll probably be interested in these results too. So what we've actually got is a digital recording of the choir singing. We're going to record that signal onto all of these 3 machines, and then we'll compare how they recorded. That's the cunning plan anyway. So what we should get is 3 different versions of Fraser's choir recorded on the different machines at different speeds, 2-track versus 4-track, all the different combinations that we can do. That would probably make the video extremely long. So what I'm going to do is play you the excerpts, but I'm going to give you some links so you can actually, if you want to, download the file and listen critically, so you can actually sort of sidestep what YouTube do to audio tracks. And we know that they do things. So it seemed if we're going to do a proper test, you need to hear what I can hear. So I'm going to make all those files available for you so you can actually hear the differences. And I'll tell you straight away, the results were not what I expected. I did sort of rather imagine that 1963, as a 60-year-old audio recorder, and I thought it was going to be pretty terrible. And it's not. It's a fair old chunk of time. And these machines are still doing the business. So anyway, first we have to explain a few other things. What went wrong? Well, I discovered that the B77 and the A77 are quite happy working vertically, as you can see behind me. The G36 is not. It's designed for being horizontal. How do I know this? Because I wrecked a spool of tape when it decided to disintegrate. The G36 can't be used vertically because the weight of the pinch roller and the actual arm it's on is too heavy. So when you press play, it won't lock. Horizontally, press play, it moves across, there's a bit of a click and it works. So you can't use it. And also, it seems to play havoc with the brakes. That's how I managed to mangle up a spool of tape. On the subject of tape, I've also discovered that I've got a few reels back from when I was recording on reel-to-reel in the 70s, early 80s. And I got them out of the cupboard and they're rubbish. You know all this stuff about tape shedding? Well, yeah, they're actually BASF tape, which I thought was not too bad for that sort of thing. But the dropout is huge, and I didn't realise that. And so I actually did the recordings on the tape that's suffering from dropout. And I'm going to make those ones available to you as well, because lots of people don't know what dropout sounds like, I've discovered. So I'll actually put up those tracks with the dropout so you can hear what the actual problem with old-fashioned tape is when it's past its sell-by date and the oxide starts to fall off. Other than that, bottle of alcohol and some cleaning buds, and it's not too bad at all. The killer, of course, is the cost of the tape. A spool of tape on a 10.5-inch reel is now about 70 quid. And 70 quid is a huge amount of money for something that doesn't last very long. I get a bit longer on these machines because they're running at 7.5 inches per second. It's just very annoying, the cost of tape. You know, we're used to the actual recordings we make being free. You know, once we've got the gear, you press record and it works. Not so with reel-to-reels. You actually record on a medium that you can wear out or damage, as I've done today. It's pretty typical for me, to be honest. Anyway, let's get into it. First thing, how did we actually do the recording? Well, the important thing to remember about reel-to-reels being analog is that the 0 point on the VU meter is not the maximum you can push the tape to. And with experience, you sort of know how much extra level you can get on the tape before it fully saturates and starts to sound horrible. So what I did was, I took Fraser's recording and I normalised it to digital maximum, bar a teeny bit, and then I recorded some tones. Tones are really important for reel-to-reels because you need to sort of set levels and you can't do it while the meters are flipping about. So I recorded a 1K tone at the start and I recorded it 3 dB down from maximum in the computer. And I used that minus 3 dB as my 0 dB reading to line up the machines. So each one was fed the signal, adjust the input gain to give 0 on the meter, and that gives me enough headroom for the little bit extra I've got. And this recording goes from very quiet to quite loud. So it sort of explores the dynamic range. And at the end of the recording, you sort of reveal the hiss that analog tape has created. So line up first. Once you've got the line up, do the recording. At the end of that, press stop. And then all I did was took those recordings, used the test tone again, and recorded them back into Cubase. So we've got the original, and then we've got the different machine versions of that original recording for you to listen to. What do you reckon? Well, to my ears, the B77 is clearly the one that's got a slightly limited frequency response, but that's because the B77 here, its maximum speed is 3 3/4 inches per second. So you'd expect that sort of top end to be a bit missing. The A77 is clearly quite bright at the top. It's a little bit perhaps harsh maybe in some areas. The really ancient G36 does a pretty good job. You know, for something that's got valves in it and something that's like over 60 years old, I think it's doing pretty well. If you want to listen to the two dropout recordings, the dodgy tape that was on the G36 and the A77, the first time I did it, you can have a listen to that by downloading the tracks. But they're pretty horrible, really. Not safe enough to actually use, so that tape realistically is fit for the bin and nothing else. My particular opinion on this is all three of these machines have got life left in them. The B77 is definitely the nicest machine in terms of operation. It's quite easy to load. The best thing about it, of course, it's solenoid operation, so you can actually go from fast forward through to play by just hitting the button, and the machine will let you do it. On the mechanical ones, of course, you have to go through stop. It's no big problem. The other thing I discovered was that the A77 is just a little bit gutless when it comes to the 10.5-inch spools. It slows down towards the end. It's just having a little bit more effort to sort of turn the reels round when one is full and the other one is virtually empty. Other than that, all three of them have got use in them. So I hope that was useful. I think it was, because we talk about old tape machines and sort of worry about the sound quality and things, but I was quite crafty in the way that I laid them out. We went from the B77 at 3 3/4 straight back to the original digital. So it's interesting to see the difference between them, and you can actually hear the actual sort of frequency response open and close as we switch between them. But realistically, 7.5 inches per second on two of these machines, it's okay. 15 would be great, but if you look currently on eBay at the price of A77s, B77s, and even the people who are selling the G36s, the price they are asking is ridiculous. There's a 15 inch per second G36 on eBay as we speak, and they want $2,000 for it. No, not with my money. Anyway, look after yourselves. See you on the next video. Take care.